Hi, and welcome back to the Friday Parts channel. Today we're going to be going over how to properly maintain and inspect the radiator on your farm equipment. It's important before you work on any piece of equipment, you want to park on a level surface, make sure you're in park, and make sure the engine has time to cool down. Now that we're on level ground and the tractor is safe to work on, let's go over the cooling system and how the radiator plays a crucial role in the cooling process of your equipment. The hot coolant gets sent back to the radiator, which uses the fan and airflow to cool that down, which then gets pumped back to the water pump and the whole process starts over again. Keep in mind, if any of these parts are not working correctly, especially in the hot summer months, it can lead to engine failure and overheating. No one wants to find out the radiator is broken when you're going out to do the work. So let's go over a few indicators that your radiator might need replacing. The easiest indicator is the temperature gauge on your dash. If this is constantly reading at a high temperature or overheating, this is a really good reason to think your radiator might need some attention. If you notice your coolant levels are dropping, or you notice some puddles underneath on the ground, this is also another indicator that you might need to check your radiator. If you look at your radiator and you see rust spots or discoloration, that's a sign that you could have corrosion, which will lead to a weak or failed radiator. If you notice misshapen or bent fins, this is going to restrict the airflow on your radiator and not allow the air to go through to cool down the hot coolant. One of the best ways to prolong the life of your radiator is to keep your radiator clean. This is a very simple process. Some of the tools for it is an air gun, and you want safety equipment like safety glasses and some gloves. One of the most common and easy ways to clean your radiator is with an air gun. You want to go nice and gentle with this so you don't bend the fins of your radiator. Sometimes after blowing it out, you'll have some stubborn dirt that just didn't come out. You can always take some cleaner, spray it on, and take a rag and gently wipe it off. Gently, not to damage any of the fins. Now this radiator is clean and ready to go. But if you do happen to have to replace your radiator, here's how you would go about doing it. A helpful tip for when you're taking apart your radiator or any piece of equipment. Little helpful tip is to take your cell phone and take a picture of what you're doing so you know how it's supposed to look when it's all back together. This is something you can refer back to. So the first step in removing your radiator is you want to loosen up these clamps and take off these hoses. This will cause the coolant to start draining out. So you want to get an oil pan or a bucket to put underneath to catch the coolant. After removing both hoses, top and bottom, and letting the coolant drain out, now you want to move on to the fan. You want to take apart any kind of shields or shrouds that are around the fan, and then move on to the mounting bolts on the fan. So after we've disconnected both hoses and let the coolant drain out, if you have to take the fan off to get your radiator out, the next step would be taking any shields or shrouds off around the fan. Once all the shrouds and shields are removed and out of your way, you can properly take out your radiator. You're either going to want to take your hood off or raise your hood depending on the age of your tractor. The next step is to take the mounting bolts off that hold the radiator in place. This will loosen up the radiator and enable you to slide it out. Once you install your new radiator and put everything into place, you just reverse the process. Put your mounting bolts back in, put your shrouds and shields back together, and reconnect your hoses and clamps. Once you get the coolant in, you want to turn the tractor or piece of equipment on, let everything cycle to get all the air bubbles out. After a while, you may need to check and add more coolant. So when you remove your hoses to drain the coolant out of your radiator, you may find some sludge in there. Then you would have to flush the radiator to get that sludge out. They do make flush products to flush out your radiator, but another way to do it is to take a hose and run some water through. Not only does this flush out your radiator, but it's a good way to check to make sure you don't have any pinholes in your radiator. So now that everything's back together, let's recap. Make sure your tractor is safe to work on, level steady area, parking brake on, and make sure your engine is cooled down before working on it. Next, you want to make sure you do a visual check. Make sure there's no dirt, debris, and damaged fins in the radiator. Next, you want to make sure you have all the tools for the job. You want to make sure you have your safety glasses, gloves, and your air hose. Make sure you're gentle when using the air hose so you don't damage the fins of the radiator. Finally, after replacement, you want to add the coolant to the proper level. Make sure to run the engine to eliminate all the air bubbles that are inside and refill the coolant as needed. Remember, maintaining your radiator will help prolong the life of it so you don't have to replace it. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And for quality parts, check out FridayParts in the link below.